All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, where we're doing some team previews before the season, carrying on with the ACC. We got Louisville today. If you are enjoying the content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We actually have a special edition of Mainly Hoops where 2 out of the 3 of us are present together, so that's pretty neat. But we're going to go right into it, start off with the offensive strengths, and we're going to start with Cody, actually.
Yeah, I wish I could be there for a full live episode, but maybe that's for another day. But for Louisville, I mean, I think they have a pretty obvious strength. It's their shooting and their floor spacing at every position, and pretty much at all times. I mean, there's some guys that don't profile as great shooters on this roster, but for like the starting lineup, it's pretty ridiculous, and it's led by the freshmen, Mikal Brown, Ryan Conwell, and Isaac McNeely, who all light it up. And they probably make up for the best shooting backcourt in the entire country. McNeely shot at 42.1% on 7.5 attempts per game. Conwell was 41.3% on 7.1 attempts per game. And then not a ton of info on Brown or any sort of like high volume, but I mean, he shot 20 for 42 from 3 at the FIBA U19 World Cup, so he can obviously light it up. Watched a little bit of that, and he's got deep range, and I mean, can shoot it in a lot of different situations, so he's going to fit in just fine here. And just another note on McNeely, it's just like if he can get up 7.5 3-point attempts per game in the Virginia offense, like just imagine how many 3-point attempts he's going to get up in this Louisville offense. I'm kind of cherry picking this stat here. I forget who I heard it from, but McNeely made just 6 threes in transition last year at Virginia out of 101 of his makes. I mean, how many transition threes is he going to make this coming season? Like 35 to 40? I mean, he's going to push, if he gets the minutes and the volume, he's going to push 150 makes and probably going to lead the country in threes. And I mean, I can say that pretty firmly. So yeah, this perimeter offense is pretty ridiculous, and they can all kind of play off of each other with their spot up shooting ability, and they can also create their own perimeter shot off the bounce. So, and then I mean, add in a guy off the bench who's probably one of the best guards and best bench guards in the country, and Adrian Woolley coming from Kennesaw State, and you have a really dynamic backcourt. I mean, he shot at 42% himself, so super impressive, and he's going to be more like the downhill creator for this team, creating other opportunities for guys like McNeely and Conwell and some other off-ball shooters on this roster. Then there's some floor spacing upside with the front court group as well. I mean, Cason Pryor is a much better shooter than what he put up last season. I mean, he shot at 5 for 33 in the 7 games that he played, but he proved that he can space the floor with his 37 for 105 mark at South Florida the year before. Another guy in Ali Khalifa, who we didn't see last year. We saw him at BYU 2 years ago, but he shot it, I believe, like 32%, is a real pick and pop guy. And he's going to be a guy that can really create some offense in like the dribble handoff game and hitting guys off back cuts when teams overplay the 3-point line. So he's going to be pretty key for this team. And then a guy in Sanande Frew, I think could end up starting at the 5 for this team next year. I mean, we might see Frew and Pryor play next to each other. Frew can space it a little bit, but I mean, he's going to impact the game in other areas.
Marcus, take it away. What strengths do you see?
I mean, Cody
got it all covered.
Took a lot. No, I mean, the obvious things, like Cody said, I'm not going to spend too much time with it, but like the shooting, of course, is a big upside for them. To your point about Brown, like he looked awesome in the FIBA World Cup. His range, not only like just in general, but off the bounce from behind the arc, I think is gonna be a big key for them. I'll spend a little bit more time, I guess, on the big men. So Pryor and Khalifa, I think, like you mentioned, their floor spacing capability, but I also think like their playmaking capability. Like Pryor can put it on the deck and go by and get to the rim. Like for anybody that watched him at USF a couple of years ago, he could take pretty much any 4-man, 5-man off the bounce in that league. Granted, it wasn't the ACC, but I still think he's going to have the ability to do that. And then for Khalifa, like not so much off the bounce for him, but like you mentioned, like he's a really, really good passer. His assist rate, what was it, 2 years ago, was like 32% at BYU. And if you just watch the tape, like his ability to anticipate back cuts, anticipate, guys coming open, I think he's going to play right into the hands of Louisville's offense. And, what more could you want with a team that has the shooting that they have with big men that can make plays and hit them when they're open? So, I'm really excited about this Louisville offense, as I think pretty much anybody should be. And we haven't even really mentioned Javon Hadley. Like, I think he's another guy that is, I forget what he averaged last year, but he shot at 38% from three. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife in a way where, he can do a lot of different things on the offensive end. He's like 6'6". I feel like he's a guy that can really just fit into a role and do whatever, a team needs him to do. So I think he's going to just really complement all these guards and the shooting that they have super well. And not to mention, like, he can also make shots himself.
Do we see any areas of concern for the Louisville's offense? Obviously, we think it's, going to excel and be very good. But Cody, what weaknesses do you see out of Louisville?
The only thing I could really pick out was potentially dealing with high-level athleticism. I mean, I think the spacing at all five positions is going to help deal with these like hyper-athletic defenses, but the guards not really being able to generate like a high volume of rim attempts, I think could become a small issue. I mean, it's mostly just like nitpicking, but in certain matchups, I could definitely see where it's a problem. And then I do think they're a bit worse on the offensive glass than past Pat Kelsey teams, but again, I think the efficiency from the floor is going to make up for it. I could easily see this team being the top effective field goal percentage offense in the country, but Pat Kelsey teams were top 50 in offensive rebound rate in 5 straight seasons before finishing 116th last year, which is still a pretty good number. And, it could still be an emphasis to get on the glass a little bit. So I think some guys on this roster can put up better numbers than they have in their career, but just the front court in general isn't like going to be all over the glass. Maybe Frew gets on the glass. I mean, I think he averaged like 2.5 offensive rebounds per game in the German league he was in, but Khalifa and Pryor don't really project as great offensive rebounders. And then the guards obviously aren't going to help all that much in that area.
Do you agree? Anything to add?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I twisted it a different way. And again, it's kind of nitpicking. It's, they may be a little bit too perimeter oriented at times. I think it could be a team that potentially like falls in love with the three a little bit too much. And I guess the other thing, not necessarily like these are more just like forecasts than they are like actual weaknesses. I think maybe Pryor and Khalifa, who both basically didn't play last year, I'm just forecasting like maybe that has some growing pains. Pryor coming off of a serious knee injury and Khalifa, who didn't play at all last year. So just getting them back into the swing of things. Are they going to be able to play, big minutes early? I think that's really just a concern more than a weakness. I don't like if they are what they've been in the past, like it's not a weakness at all because they're both, I think going to make strong impacts for this team. But just in the event where it has been, Pryor played 7 games last year, it has been some time where they've really played a lot of basketball, then that could potentially come into play, I think.
Let's switch to the other side of the ball and talk defensively. First, let's start with strengths, Cody.
Yeah, the number one strength I had picked out was their front court versatility. I think Frew and Pryor have real rim protection skills, and I think they're going to be able to play on the floor together a lot this season. I mean, they could potentially play like a bigger lineup with Javon Hadley sliding down to the 3 position just with his versatility. He's kind of like the unsung hero from this team from like a, connector piece standpoint, like Marcus mentioned earlier. But there are paths where this front court defense can be really good. I think a lot of the times they're going to be a little bit small in the front court, but when Frew and Pryor are playing together, I do think that's a really good combo. They're going to be able to get on the defensive glass at a high level. And I think Pryor's kind of a Swiss Army knife on the defensive side. He can guard on the perimeter. He can basically guard anyone that isn't like an elite creator on the ball. I mean, he can his perimeter defense is very underrated, and he provides some real rim protection skills as well. Those are the Khalifa minutes aren't going to be pretty. I don't really think he plays all that much. I think he's going to play in like 4 or 5 minute spurts, maybe a couple times per game. I think I see him playing 10 to 12 minutes. Kelsey likes to use his bench a lot, but I do think overall, like the most optimal lineup is going to be with Frew and Pryor up front. I think that actually makes up for like pretty close to a top 25 defense.
Mark, is anything to add from you?
No, I mean, I think to go along with what Cody said, I think their positional size is going to play a factor. Like, I think they have some bigger guards. All their guards are basically standing like 6'3", 6'4", or taller. So pretty much everyone that's going to play in that backcourt is going to be, most likely bigger than like the backcourt of the other team, I think, or at least the same size. So I think that could definitely help. And I think just the depth of guards that they have to be able to keep rolling at teams is going to play into their advantage too. Having that depth, you're going to keep bodies fresh. And, I think they're all going to be very capable on the offensive end, as we've talked about. So, I don't think that you're going to really lose a step on the other end as you're like filtering in these guards to kind of keep the defense fresh and keep throwing guys out there. So I guess like that's my main strength, along with what Cody brought up. I really like this team after looking into them a little bit more. I think they have a strong upside.
Any areas of concern from the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little more concerned about the perimeter defense than Marcus is. I mean, they do have some size across the board, but I wouldn't call it like necessarily elite. Like I do think, I mean, Mikel Brown, like slight frame, I think he's going to get knocked off his spots quite a bit. Like, Conwell hasn't been known as a great defender throughout his entire career. I think McNeely's solid. He's played in like with solid defenses at Virginia, but I'm not sure he's like the most elite defender out there. So like with the starting group, I think you can consider this group to be below average, like in the ACC. They do have depth, which because I do really like Woolley as a defender, as an all-ball defender especially. And then like a guy like deep off the bench in Kobe Rogers, who was at Charleston, redshirted last year. He's a really good defender. He has more length than, his 6'3" frame suggests. So I do like those two as defenders, but it's just those guys are most likely coming off the bench here. So it's kind of unsure of what their roles are exactly going to look like. And I just think the length as a whole is a little bit lacking. It's going to put pressure on a front court D that I do kind of like, but it's not necessarily elite. There's not like a rim anchor that you can filter everything into. Like there's going to be more versatility that this defense is going to kind of live off in the front court. And they could really struggle with some certain matchups again. Like I think that's another concern, is just dealing with high level athleticism, like even in the front court. And then, really good creators, on-ball creators in the backcourt could, kind of have their way at times. Like I said, I don't think they're terrible. And I think there's some turnover forcing upside with guys like Brown and Woolley, and Conwell has been a defensive playmaker in his career, but I think the on-ball D as a whole just isn't that great.
Marcus, do you share the same concerns or anything to that?
I mean, for me, it was more, I had some current concerns in the front court a little bit, just with like the athleticism standpoint. Like I'm looking at Khalifa and especially Pryor coming off the injury, with that, like their rim protection depth, like Pryor and Khalifa aren't like fantastic rim protectors. Like I think both of them are going to be, especially Pryor. Pryor's shown to be a really, really good defensive rebounder. He's got like a 25% defensive rebound rate in his career at USF. And then last year, I think he was around 23% in his 7-game stint. So I think they'll be fine in that aspect. But in terms of like actually protecting the rim, like the depth that they have in that area, I do worry about, especially like Cody said, if the guards aren't really able to keep guys in front, or, if, like you mentioned with Brown, he is like a thinner framed guy, if he's getting pushed and kind of bullied around, is that back line always going to be there to kind of protect the rim? I'm not sure. So I guess that would be my main concern with them.
All right, we're going to move right along to the X factor and the MVP of this team, prediction basically of what we can expect from these couple of guys. Cody, will let you take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could pick from a lot of guys here, like depending on how high you are on Mikael Brown Jr., I think you could have easily made him the MVP. I mean, I think that's a little more bold just because we haven't really seen him at the college level. But I ultimately went with Ryan Conwell. I just think he provides the highest floor on this offense. I think he provides the most perimeter versatility. I mean, he can get his own off the bounce. He can create for others. And he showed an ability to score at the rim with some creativity as well. So ultimately I went with him as the MVP. I think he's going to be on the floor for, 30 plus minutes a game, even though Kelsey likes to use his bench when he has the depth. But I do think Conwell is probably going to be the guy that he leans on the most. And my X factor was Kason Pryor. Coming off the injury, I know it could be a little bit of an unknown how much run he's getting in the early parts of the season, but I think he's so important to this team defensively from a versatility standpoint. Like, is he going to play the 4? He's going to play the 4 more often than he plays the 5, I think, but he's going to have to, take on a ton of responsibility for this defense. And I think this defense, if this defense ultimately ends up being top 15 or top 20, it's because Kason Pryor is just an absolute menace and a Swiss Army knife.
Marcus, you have the same picks, or did you go a different direction? I actually do. I went with Ryan Conwell MVP. I just like to kind of piggyback off Cody. He gets it done at all 3 levels. Plays with really good strength, really good pace. And I think what you're also going to see here is he was 98th percentile in catch and shoot opportunities last year. He now has a team that has other guards that can also create. In particular, like Woolley and Brown. And I think, you're going to see him get to play off the ball some, have less pressure on him, always having the ball. And I think you're going to see the ball get sprayed to him, and he might shoot an even higher percentage on catch and shoot opportunities this year. So that's my MVP. And then Kason Pryor, also my X factor. I just think his versatility on both ends is going to be huge. On the offensive end, his ability to, depending on who's guarding him, be able to take him off the bounce or really space him out and knock down the 3. I think not enough can be said about that. And then on the defensive end, being able to, his switch ability, his ability to defensive rebound, I think is going to be huge. I remember at USF, he used to be a super frustrating player. I don't know, it just seemed like during that run that USF won, I forget how many they won in a row, they were just kind of red hot. And, he was just kind of annoying in some ways. But he is really good when he's healthy. I think he's an X factor, but there are a lot of ways I think that you could have gone with their X factor. There's just a lot of good players on this roster.
Cody, let's hear from you for a ceiling, a floor for this Louisville team, and then one bold prediction that you can leave us with.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people view this team as more of a ceiling team, but I think on the offensive side especially, they have a high ceiling and a high floor, because I think they can play in transition at a high level, and they can play in the half court with their spacing. Being able to play through that front court at times, like if guys like Mikael Brown are struggling with his decision making early in the season, or they're just struggling to get downhill to score at the rim, they're going to be able to play through their front court, and they could be those guys can be a stabling presence in the half court. So I think the floor is actually pretty high. I think they're pretty firmly a top 20 team for the entire season. I mean, they may go through stretches where they just miss a million threes and they're just due for a ton of regression. They lose to some teams that they shouldn't. But ultimately, I think they're going to be a top 20 team in the country for most of the year. And then obviously the ceiling is high, because they can go on an absolute scorching hot run in the tournament. And realistically, they can win the title with how good this offense is. And then like the defense may ultimately hold them back, like in the sense of, playing up to against the elites. But I just think in a tournament setting, just having that floor in the half court on the offensive side is just going to be able to, kind of mask some of those deficiencies that they have. So, I mean, they're firmly in the tournament. I think they're a 7 seed, maybe an 8 seed at the worst. Like, I think that's really the worst possible outcome for this team. And realistically, I don't know if they're a 1, just because, like I said, they can go through some games where they really struggle to shoot the ball and they lose to teams that they don't. So I'll say 2 or 3 seed is their ceiling, and they can realistically win a title. And my bold prediction, it's not all that bold. It's like they're a top 3 offense in the country. Like it's just a fact. I think not all that bold. It's just a statement, I guess.
Marcus, ceiling, floor, bold prediction.
Yeah. Similarly, I had their floor at 7. I had their ceiling at like they can win the ACC, and same thought as you, Cody. Like I just don't see them as a 1 seed. So I said 2 seed as their ceiling. I think offense, obviously, as we've talked about throughout this whole episode, they're going to be really, really good. What could hold them back potentially is the defensive end. I think, you just don't know with a team. They're going to be super offensive oriented, I think, and there are some unknowns on the defensive end. So that's ultimately why I feel like they could end up like a 7 seed type of team, but I don't really expect it. I would lean more towards, the ceiling end of that or somewhere in between. I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. My bold prediction, again, like I don't know how bold it is because you're going to see a lot of threes go up here, but I said they're going to lead the country in 3-point field goals made. We'll see. I mean, I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think college basketball is just better when Louisville's good, so I'm excited for this next season for Louisville. But we're going to wrap things up here. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.